don't want to go among mad people.
Oh, you can't help that. Most everyone's mad.
Arkham Asylum, Gotham City's psychiatric hospital for the criminally insane. Since its construction, this institution has housed some of the most complex and lethal members of Batman's rogues gallery. It has treated prisoners with unusual medical requirements, as well as those who are simply too dangerous to be patients within a regular medical facility. In this video, I will be focusing on the villains who either spent the most significant time in Arkham, had the most interesting cases, or had a massive effect on the asylum itself. I will identify the crimes that got them incarcerated, as well as delve into their psyches to see what turned them to criminality in the first place. These are the inmates of Arkham Asylum. Although I will not discuss every single character that spent time in Arkham, I will look at as many individuals as I can, quickly mentioning the less significant inmates whilst paying greater attention to my special cases. We will begin our tour with the founder of the asylum itself, Amadeus Arkham. Born in 1890, psychologist Amadeus Arkham founded Arkham Asylum, which was inspired by his mentally ill mother Elizabeth Arkham, whom he euthanized. He would repress these events after inheriting her residency, Mercy Mansion, and turn the home into a facility for those suffering with neurological disorders. During its reconstruction into an asylum, his wife Constance and daughter Harriet were raped and murdered by the escaped convict Martin Mad Dog Hawkins. Amadeus would discover the gruesome remains of his family within the mansion, which included his daughter's decapitated head within a doll's house, and the alias of the murderer Mad Dog carved into his wife's chest.
I see my wife first, my dear Constance. Her body is in pieces. Harriet lies nearby, undescribably violated. Almost idly, I wonder where her head is. And then I look at the doll's house, and the doll's house looks at me. Looks at me.
When he finally opened the asylum, Hawkins became his first patient, and Amadeus used the opportunity to murder him via electroshock therapy. The incident was ruled accidental, but only acted as the beginning of Amadeus's descent into insanity. Dr. Arkham designed a floor plan that evoked occult runes, believing that the pattern would drive away the mysterious bat that has haunted his dreams. In 1963, Amadeus died as an inmate in his own asylum, while scratching the words of a binding spell into the walls and floor of his cell with his fingernails. Alberto Falcone. Son of crime lord Carmine Falcone, Alberto developed a pathological jealousy towards his older siblings, who his father preferred. Despite studying at Harvard and Oxford universities, he was eager to follow in his father's footsteps, however Carmine strictly forbid it. During the events of the Long Halloween, Alberto took the alias of Holiday and committed a series of murders that targeted Gotham's criminals. Eventually, Alberto proudly admitted to committing all of the Holiday murders, including that of his cousin, Johnny Vitti. Despite initially receiving the death sentence, the Falcone influence allowed him to plead insanity, and he was imprisoned in Arkham Asylum across the hall from Calendar Man. Amygdala. Awaking within Gotham General Hospital during mid-surgery, Aaron Helsinger was a hulking monstrosity who suffered from brain damage. Under the alias of Amygdala, he spent much of his time incarcerated at Arkham Asylum, where he fought Batman but was ultimately defeated. It is believed that Helsinger is good-natured, however his simple-mindedness sees him unable to control his emotions, which combined with his incredible strength makes for a deadly combination. The Black Mask. Roman Sionis' challenges with mental health began shortly after his birth when he endured a head injury. During his childhood, Roman would develop a fascination with masks, which he compared to his parents' pretentious behaviour around their associates. This formed Roman's hatred for his parents and their friends, which included Thomas and Martha Wayne. After becoming vice president at his father's makeup company, he burned his family home down, killing his parents just so that he could take full control of the business. Despite this, Roman ran the business into the ground and was forced to accept a bailout from Wayne Enterprises to save his company. However, the deal required his resignation as president of Janus Cosmetics. Due to this humiliation, Roman adopted the name of the Black Mask and formed his own criminal organisation called the False Face Society, who wore masks that reflected their own personalities. Sionis would use his gang to assist in his vendetta against the Wayne Foundation and Bruce Wayne. Ultimately, he would battle Batman within the Sionis family estate, which he had rebuilt. It was during this encounter that his ebony mask was burned into his face. He was subsequently delivered to Arkham Asylum, but eventually escaped and returned to crime. Bane.
Special case.
It is no surprise that Bane would end up at Arkham, as he was born into a world of mental torture. Forced to serve his revolutionary father's sentence, Bane spent 17 years of his life inside a chamber connected to the ocean within the prison. He would need to swim for his life on each night, as the tide would fill his cell with water. Bane had a massive impact on Arkham Asylum as it released all the inmates, ensuring that Batman had to work tirelessly to recapture them all. During the crime syndicate's takeover of the world, the criminals who were once imprisoned in Arkham Asylum divided Gotham amongst themselves, with each Arkhamite getting their own portion of the city. Bane, wanting the city for himself, recruited the prisoners of Blackgate Penitentiary to fight against Scarecrow and his army of Arkhamites. Despite defeating his foes and winning the Arkham War, Bane was apprehended by Batman, who sent him to the newly renovated Arkham Asylum. During a later spell within the asylum, Bane was unaffected by the Joker's venom when it spread to Arkham Manor. Calendar Man. Certified as an insane criminal who held a fascination for crimes based on the calendar, Calendar Man has remained an almost permanent inmate of Arkham Asylum. The most accomplished portrayal of this character depicts him with the abbreviations of the months tattooed around his head in a circle. Much later, Calendar Man was being treated at Arkham Asylum when a serial killer named Holiday began killing Gotham's mob bosses during various holidays. Calendar Man agreed to help Batman, but only because he believed that he was being forgotten. Calendar Man deduced that the killer was Alberto Falcone, but hid the information from Batman. After escaping Arkham, Calendar Man tortured Alberto by pretending to be the ghost of his late father Carmine, telling him to take over the 5 families of the Mafia. Calendar Man attempted to kill Alberto, but was attacked by Sofia Gigante, who savagely beat him. Calendar Man was later discovered by police and taken back to Arkham. Clayface. As a talented and handsome actor, Basil Karlo became a huge success with audiences through his movie roles. Unfortunately, his life would take a horrible turn when his father died, which caused Karlo to crash his car, disfiguring him in the process. In a desperate bid to salvage his career, he began abusing a putty created by his father, which helped preserve his handsome appearance. However, when his supply ran low, he tried to steal the substance from a chemical plant but was apprehended by Batman. Whilst recovering in hospital, Carlo's true visage was revealed by news reporters, which cost him his career and girlfriend. In an attempt to turn his life around, Carlo tried to break into the warehouse where the police were holding his stolen stash of the putty, but was doused in the chemical during an encounter with the cops. This transformed his entire body as he became the monstrous Clayface. A Serious House on Serious Earth would expand on the body horror aspect of his character by depicting him as a grotesque individual who was wasting away from a skin disease. He would try to infect Batman by touching him, which resulted in the Dark Knight breaking Clayface's leg in the process. Cornelius Stirk. Cornelius Stirk was confined to Arkham Asylum at the young age of 16 after he tried to murder a classmate. For 16 years, Stirk was locked in Arkham, where he was diagnosed with a severe hypothalamic disorder due to a deficiency of neurotransmitters in the brain. During his time as an Arkham inmate, Stirk remained under constant medication until he learned how to control his PSI powers and use them to manipulate the doctors, convincing them that he was completely sane. Stirk was eventually released and quickly started killing people and eating their hearts. He was eventually defeated by Batman and returned to Arkham Asylum. Whilst in the new Arkham, Stirk was interviewed by Elliot Beeston, a writer who wanted the perspective of an actual serial killer for his upcoming book. Stirk took this opportunity to murder the writer and project his image to escape from Arkham. Death Rattle. During the events of Living Hell, Death Rattle was revealed to be a cult leader who communed with the dead. This self-proclaimed psychic and founder of his own religion listened to the voices in his head and killed 56 members of his own ministry. During his treatment at Arkham, it was highly recommended that Death Rattle was forbidden from socializing with other inmates. He would eventually share a cell with Warren White, who he forbid from sleeping on the top bunk because he believed that a girl he had once smothered was still sleeping in that bed. Subsequently, he would threaten Warren's life, and as a result, White was transferred to another cell. When Arkham was attacked by demons, Death Rattle listened to his former communion and sacrificed himself by walking into a fire. Dr. Destiny. In a serious house on Serious Earth, Batman encountered a rather horrific-looking and wheelchair-bound Dr. Destiny. In this depiction, his body had atrophied because he had been robbed of his ability to dream. Ultimately, Batman knocked Destiny unconscious by pushing him down a flight of stairs. Doodlebug. During Arkham Asylum Living Hell, Doodlebug was portrayed as an artist who used blood in his paintings. Firefly. Firefly was obsessed with the places he couldn't visit as a child and decided to burn them down. He began with Elmo's Pier before burning the Majestic Theatre and the Gotham Zoo. He was eventually defeated by Batman and sent to Arkham, but was released by Bane, who destroyed the asylum's walls during nightfall. The Great White Shark. After facing charges of massive fraud, Warren White's lawyer got him to plead insanity in order to avoid being sent to prison. However, his plan backfired when the judge had him admitted to Arkham. During his stay, he was forced to share a cell with Death Rattle, who tried to rape him, but would later share a cell with Humpty Dumpty, who wanted to fix him. Ultimately, Jane Doe tried to kill him on several occasions and almost succeeded after locking him in a freezer. This would cause his skin to bleach and his nose and lips to fall off due to frostbite. His new look would complete his transformation from a prison fish to the villain known as the Great White Shark. Ultimately, his incarceration would provide him with a perfect alibi, allowing White to organise Gotham's crime from within his cell inside Arkham Asylum. Harley Quinn. With her genius levels of intellect, Harleen Quinzel majored in psychology at Gotham State University. Upon graduating, she received an internship at Arkham Asylum where she would meet the Joker. After several sessions treating the Clown Prince of Crime, the two shared an affair, and Quinzel helped the Joker escape from Arkham before she was caught. Her medical license was revoked, and she was now placed within Arkham Asylum as a patient. She has since escaped on several occasions. Hugo Strange. The childhood of Hugo Strange was scarred by trauma, leading him to an obsession with bettering himself. Eventually, he became a professor of psychiatry at Gotham State University. However, his tenure was suspended over increasingly bizarre theories in genetic engineering that sought to eradicate what he saw as human imperfections. He began experimenting on his patients at Arkham and created a terrible race of cannibalistic monster men. He would later use his abominations to commit acts of violence on his behalf. Eventually, Strange developed an obsession with killing Bruce Wayne as to take the Batman identity for himself. However, when Strange became convinced that his assumptions about Bruce Wayne were wrong, he had a psychotic breakdown. As a result, he would voluntarily check himself into Arkham Asylum as a patient. Humpty Dumpty. Humphrey Dumpler's childhood contributed greatly to his convoluted state of mind. Dumpler witnessed the accidental destruction of his family home, the untimely death of his dog, and ultimately the demise of his parents, who were crushed under a Christmas tree on Christmas Day. Dumpler would have to live with his abusive grandmother, who beat him with her walking stick and forced him to work within her shoe factory. He would also be tormented by others who mocked his appearance and childlike mental state. Dumpler became obsessed with repairing things that he saw as broken, starting with a train that he missed. Humpty would learn how to disassemble and reassemble mechanical devices through books that he had borrowed from the library. Unfortunately, his repairs did not always work, and he caused utter destruction when the train that he fixed, in inverted commas, crashed. Matters became worse when he tried to repair the clock of a clock tower, which resulted in several giant objects situated on Gotham's rooftops to collapse onto the streets. Arguably, the most horrific repair performed by this seemingly innocent individual was when he tried to fix his abusive grandmother. Dumpler hacked her to pieces before sewing her back together again in a sick attempt to cure his grandmother of her disposition. It was this crime that saw him sentenced to Arkham Asylum. During his time at Arkham, he requested to share a cell with Warren White because he believed that White was the worst man he had ever met and needed fixing. Jane Doe. Jane Doe is a serial killer who observes her victims before killing them and taking their identities in order to find one that she can be happy in. Not limiting herself to gender or occupation, she bases her observations on how well she can mimic the people she targets. When speaking about herself, she revealed that Jane is a cipher. She's incomplete, her life is empty, so she covets the lives of others. She takes their lives so she can have their lives. This is exactly what occurred when she usurped the identity of Arkham psychiatrist Anne Carver before giving psychological evaluations of other inmates. She used Carver's identity to seduce her patient Warren White before trying to murder the billionaire criminal in order to assume his identity. Additionally, she tormented Aaron Cash with Carver's death, playing on his strong feelings for the psychiatrist by telling him that she found him repulsive. Her masquerade was finally ended by Batman in a horrific revelation. Jeremiah Arkham.
Special case.
The last Arkham introduced Jeremiah Arkham as the asylum's director and nephew of Amadeus. Jeremiah took advantage of Batman's time undercover at Arkham to gain a psychological insight on the vigilante. However, much like his ancestor, Jeremiah would also go insane whilst running the asylum. He believed that at the heart of the labyrinth was a solitary confinement area called the Hole, and housed patients who could not safely mingle with other inmates. Conversely, these patients did not actually exist and were figments of Dr. Arkham's imagination. These events would contribute to his transition into the Black Mask. The Joker.
Special case.
As one of the most notorious inmates of Arkham, the Joker has been in and out of the asylum over the years. It is believed that the Clown Prince of Crime's origins were revealed in The Killing Joke, where it took one bad day to ruin his life. The former chemical company worker quit his job to become a stand-up comedian, but ultimately failed. Desperate to support his pregnant wife, he agreed to assist some criminals through the chemical plant where he previously worked so that they could rob an adjacent high-stakes card game. However, when he was informed that his wife and unborn child died in a household accident, he tried to withdraw from the plan. Unfortunately, the criminals insisted on his presence and he fell into a vat of chemicals whilst being pursued by Batman. His disfigurement proved to be the final straw, and the Joker was born. Arguably, his most infamous depiction was during the events of A Serious House on Serious Earth. In this portrayal, the Joker's constant sexual references represent him as the perverse and forbidden. He personifies our irrational dark sides. On April 1st, the Joker seized control of the asylum and held the staff hostage unless Batman agreed to meet with him at Arkham. Upon his arrival, the Joker would force Batman into a game of hide and seek, giving him 1 hour to escape Arkham before his adversaries are sent to hunt him down. Ultimately, the Joker's goal was to prove his point that Batman was just like the rest of the villains he incarcerated and belonged in the asylum with the criminally insane. The Joker would torment and kill many of Arkham's staff during his treatment at the facility. This was often for a series of horrific and deadly jokes.
April Fool, your wife's dead and the baby's a spastic. Get it? What a senseless waste of human life.
One such prank included spitting shards of chewed light bulb glass in Dr. Hurd's sandwich, which made him violently ill. He had also maimed others through sick gags and even killed a guard who tried to play a prank on him. Junkyard Dog. During the events of Living Hell, Junkyard Dog was presented as an inmate obsessed with trash. Killer Croc.
Special case.
Waylon Jones' psychological torture began when he was raised by his alcoholic aunt in a Florida slum, where he was bullied for being born with a condition that turned his skin green and scaly. Eventually, he would find belonging in a new home in the sewers with a group of people that were also outcasts. Caring for them deeply, Croc would turn to crime, stealing items for them to improve their living conditions and quality of life. Unfortunately, this would bring him into conflict with Batman, and he would eventually be imprisoned within Arkham Asylum. Due to the primal nature of Croc, he would often be held in solitary confinement, perhaps within a tank, as well as having his powerful jaws bound by a pressure-controlled device. These measures were taken as Croc was deemed to be too dangerous to both his fellow inmates and the asylum staff. Nothing elucidates this point clearer than his encounter with Asylum Warden Aaron Cash. During the events of Living Hell, Killer Croc would bite Aaron's hand off, who tried to intervene when Croc made a beeline for his colleague and love interest Ann Carver. Croc's holding cell, which contained a 5,000-gallon tank on the top floor, did once burst after the Joker rigged the aquarium to crack. Obviously, this caused utter chaos within the asylum. The Mad Hatter.
Special case.
Jervis Tetch is a criminal known as the Mad Hatter due to his obsession with the character from Alice in Wonderland. Tetch lost his mind and became an obsessive delusional schizophrenic before turning to crime. He would use his mind control technology to kidnap young girls and turn them into his Alices during his tea parties. Additionally, he would sell these girls, possibly as sex slaves, before he was finally stopped and sent to Arkham by the Dark Knight. Despite his facade, he was one of Arkham's most dangerous inmates, totally pleasant one moment and homicidal the next. Arguably, his most disturbing depiction was in A Serious House on Serious Earth, where he was portrayed as a paedophile. Magpie. Magpie was seen during Living Hell, where she shared a cell with Poison Ivy. Obsessed with shiny objects, she traded sex to Doodlebug in exchange for Jane Doe's shank. Subsequently, she and Poison Ivy would dig a tunnel beneath Arkham in an attempt to escape. Maxie Zeus. Maximilian Zeus was a Greek history teacher who turned to crime after losing his wife and sanity. Believing himself to be the new Zeus, he led the new Olympians in Gotham. He was eventually committed to Arkham Asylum, but he escaped in order to attend his daughter's birthday. His treatment at Arkham included electroconvulsive therapy. Mr. Freeze. Victor Freeze was abandoned by his father as a child and had to take care of his mother, who became severely handicapped after falling into a frozen lake. However, when she became a burden to him, he eventually murdered her. Years later, Victor developed an interest in cryogenics and wrote his doctoral thesis on Nora Fields, the first case of cryogenic stasis. He became so obsessed with her that he concocted a narrative that they were married despite the two never having met because Nora had been frozen decades prior. He would abuse company resources to revive his cryogenically frozen wife, but was subsequently involved in a lab accident that saw him covered in cryofluid. Disfigured and mutated from the chemicals, Dr. Freeze survived but could no longer live outside of subthermal temperatures, requiring a protective suit to survive at room temperature. He also constructed a freeze ray to terrorize Gotham, but was eventually sent to Arkham. Nocturna. Natalia Mitternacht used her hypnotic abilities to collect a string of dead husbands before being incarcerated in Arkham Asylum. She was briefly released from her cell during a breakout on the Night of the Owls when a Talon was sent to assassinate Dr. Jeremiah Arkham. She survived the night and remained in Arkham Asylum until released by Wolfspider during a fight with Batwoman. Although she was given ample opportunity to escape the city, she stayed and was acquitted for the crime that had resulted in her incarceration. Poison Ivy.
Special case.
Born with a skin condition that saw her avoid sunlight, Pamela Isley was forbidden from going outside by her abusive father. She was close to her mother, who was also the victim of domestic abuse from Pamela's father, and the two bonded over gardening. After abusing his wife, Pamela's father would gain forgiveness by buying her flowers, and this was when Pamela realised that people could be manipulated with plants. Unfortunately, Pamela's father killed his wife and buried her in the garden before he was imprisoned. In college, Pamela created designer drugs and even manipulated the dean with them. After graduating, she visited her father in prison and killed him with a kiss using her untraceable toxin. After an experiment that transformed her into a plant-human hybrid, Dr. Pamela Isley would struggle with insanity and humanity, preferring to protect plants over her own kind. She became the eco-terrorist Poison Ivy and used her ability to control all plant life to break Clayface out of Arkham. Ultimately, she would manipulate him into becoming her husband and bodyguard. During the events of Black Orchid, Isley is represented as a sexually frustrated Arkham inmate who is withering away alone in her cell. Professor Milo. A renowned chemist who turned to crime, Dr. Milo used a variety of biological attacks on Batman. His plots involved subjecting Batman to drugs and gases which had detrimental effects on his mental state. Eventually, Milo developed a serum which he used to manipulate athlete Anthony Lupus and transformed him into a werewolf. He would use Anthony's lycanthropy and try to kill the Dark Knight before his creation turned on him. Subsequently, Milo would take control of Arkham Asylum in order to use some of the inmates for his crimes. During this time, he tried to plunge Batman into insanity with another gas, but tasted his own medicine when he became exposed to the chemicals that drove him insane. Ultimately, this led him to becoming an inmate of Arkham Asylum. Professor Pig. Laszlo Valentin's obsession with perfection came from his childhood, where he was chastised by his parents for being a disappointment. Years later, Laszlo became a gifted scientist but suffered a schizophrenic breakdown which caused him to develop a deranged new persona. As Professor Pig, he became the ringmaster of the Circus of Strange, where he kidnapped people before he transformed them into his Dolatrons via invasive surgery. Pig would use identity-destroying chemicals in order to eradicate his victims' uniqueness, recreating them in his own bizarre image of perfection. His process of creating organic robots included grafting doll masks onto his victims' faces and removing their genitals as to make them incapable of thinking or feeling. Those that Pig could not fix were killed before being publicly displayed with labels indicating their imperfections. Pig was later sent to Arkham, where he fought with Batman in an attempt to escape the institution. The Riddler. Edward Nygma was the trusted strategist of Bruce Wayne's uncle Philip Kane, the CEO of Wayne Enterprises, during Bruce's absence. However, when Bruce returned and exposed his shady plans for the company, Nygma employed the Red Hood gang to assassinate him. When this failed, Nygma handed in his resignation and eventually became the Riddler, a master strategist who incorporates riddles into his crimes. During his 0-year plot, the Riddler crippled Gotham by cutting the power and telling the people that they would need to get smart or die in his attempt to exterminate the citizens that dumbed down the human race. Ultimately, Batman turned the power back on before ending the Riddler's reign. Nygma was deemed too dangerous for Blackgate Penitentiary and was incarcerated within Arkham instead. During his time in Arkham, the Joker threw a toxic gas capsule into Nygma's cell and asked him to figure a way out. When he succeeded, the Joker gave him the title of strategist in his royal interpretation of Batman's rogues gallery. Since then, the Riddler has been in and out of Arkham Asylum and Manor on several occasions. Samuel Sullivan. This Irish immigrant moved to the land of opportunity and came to idolise the superheroes of the time, such as the Green Lantern. However, when he saw the Sportsmaster defeating the Green Lantern with a wooden bat, he lost his faith after his store was destroyed during the battle. In retaliation, Sullivan murdered the mayor with a wooden baseball bat because he felt that he had given the citizens of Gotham false hope. He carved the words "made of wood" into his chest and placed his body in front of a statue of the Green Lantern which the mayor had previously erected in the superhero's honour. Subsequently, this became his method of killing until he was incarcerated within Arkham in December of 1948. His grandson Francis followed in his footsteps years later, but was likely placed in Arkham after being apprehended by Batman and the Green Lantern. The Scarecrow.
Special case.
As a child, Jonathan Crane's scientist father used him as a test subject in his research into the emotion of fear. Crane would be locked inside a dark room whilst his father examined the effects on him. It was during one of these sessions that his father died of a heart attack, leaving his son trapped within the chamber. This traumatized Jonathan Crane, who lived in perpetual fear until he continued his father's work trying to understand the emotion. He became a psychologist who specialized in phobias and used his patients as test subjects. He later developed a fear toxin gas that would cause anyone who inhaled it to hallucinate about their worst fears. He was subsequently suspended from the college when he poured a bucket of tarantulas over a student with arachnophobia. Swearing vengeance, Crane adopted the alias of Scarecrow and used his fear gas for criminal purposes in Gotham. He was imprisoned within Gotham after he tried to infect thousands of people with his new super fear toxin at the Christmas parade. During the last Arkham, Scarecrow was treated by Jeremiah for ornithopia, but later led his Arkham inmates into battle against Bane's forces. Despite this, he was defeated and left hanging from a telephone wire like an actual scarecrow. Soon after, Crane was incarcerated within Arkham again, but during this period, he was abducted to be used as an energy source in resurrecting Deacon Blackfire beneath Arkham. Although Arkham was destroyed during these events, Crane was imprisoned within Arkham Manor for his crimes. However, his time in solitary confinement was cut short when the Joker returned and released every prisoner within Arkham Manor as part of his endgame plot. Despite this, Jonathan Crane proved immune to the Joker venom and united the surviving group of Arkhamites to help Batman defeat the Joker. The Penguin. Born with a birth defect that gave him a beak-like nose that horrified his father, Oswald was heavily bullied by his older brothers and peers who mocked him for his appearance, comparing him to a penguin. Because of their teasing, Oswald developed a fascination with birds, which he felt more kinship with than people. Unfortunately, Oswald's older brothers attacked him and his pet birds, causing him to secretly murder them all one by one, making them look like accidents. Eventually, Oswald would become the crime lord named the Penguin, a ruthless and greedy Gotham City businessman. He is perhaps one of few villains who willfully allowed himself to be processed into Arkham Asylum when Bane wanted to meet him to discuss his plot to destroy Batman's spirit. During this visit, he was forced to have his head shaved due to a lice outbreak at the facility, but was released after his meeting. Two-Face.
Special case.
As a child, Harvey was the well-behaved opposite of his troublesome brother, who was accidentally killed in a fire that he prompted Harvey to start. This incident initiated Harvey Dent's schizophrenia as he developed a dark alternate persona modelled after his brother Murray. Due to this tragedy, Harvey's mother committed suicide and he was left with his abusive father to care for him. Addicted to drink and gambling, his father tormented Harvey with his favourite game, flipping a coin with the promise of not beating him if it landed tail side up. Unfortunately, the game was rigged from the start since the coin had 2 heads. This abuse exacerbated his condition and he was diagnosed with a serious psychotic disorder. Dent suffered from paranoid schizophrenia and multiple personality disorder. Harvey's interest in law actually improved his condition and his studies gave him focus. Eventually, he took a job as an assistant DA at the Gotham County District Attorney's Office, where he came to be known as an honest, incorruptible attorney. Dent also fought corruption amongst the GCPD members and was soon appointed as district attorney. However, Dent's life would take a horrible turn when he had Sal Maroni on the stands to testify. During his testimony, Sal threw nitric acid at Harvey, horribly disfiguring the left half of his face. Due to his new appearance, Dent underwent a mental breakdown and became convinced that he shared his body with another persona, becoming obsessed with duality. Now as the insane crime boss Two-Face, he was adamant that the system did not work and decided justice with the flip of a coin. He would orchestrate a mass breakout of Arkham and lead Gotham's freaks on a raid to Carmine Falcone's penthouse. During the events of A Serious House on Serious Earth, Dent's treatment tried to wean him away from depending on his coin for decisions. Initially, they replaced his cards with a die, then with a deck of tarot cards. Unfortunately, this caused him to degenerate further into madness as it rendered him incapable of making simple decisions. By the end of the story, Dent did seem capable of making his own decisions and allowed Batman to go free despite his coin landing scarred side up. The Ventriloquist. Arnold Wesker is better known as the Ventriloquist, a gangster that usually speaks through a puppet named Scarface. Wesker's mental illness makes him believe that the puppet is a separate person. His dissociative identity disorder allows him detachment from his crimes, where he can commit ruthless and violent acts whilst maintaining a quiet and meek personality. Eventually, Wesker was taken to Arkham to be treated for his multiple personality disorder, but has escaped and returned on numerous occasions. Victor Zsasz.
Special case.
This psychopathic serial killer kills indiscriminately, but the majority of his victims tend to be young women. His modus operandi is to slit the throats of his victims and leave them in lifelike poses for the authorities to find. Rather sadistically, Zsasz marks these occasions by carving his flesh with a tally mark after each kill. Victor's descent into madness began when he fell into a deep depression after going bankrupt upon hearing of his parents' deaths. Seeing his own existence as pointless, Zsasz attempted suicide until a homeless man tried to rob him. It was as Zsasz murdered his attacker that he became obsessed with liberating others from their pointless existence. During the events of Last Arkham, Zsasz was in solitary confinement, however used a secret passage to escape and commit his style of murders before returning to his cell. Some of his killings included young Karen Spengler's parents, 2 students, Patrick Glemp and Zolly Hiram, the contractor Zsasz bribed to build the secret passage during Arkham Asylum's reconstruction under its new head, Jeremiah Arkham. Zsasz's psychotic tendencies were so severe that he actually warped Jeremiah's mind and turned him into a mere henchman. Eventually, both Nightwing and Batman would stop Zsasz before returning him to Arkham. The Witch. According to herself, Samantha Voss was once a normal woman from Salem who was falsely accused of witchcraft. Due to this, she received a pentagram brand on her forehead and was burned at the stake, only to be resurrected with superhuman strength. She vowed vengeance against those who killed her, and the consequences of that vendetta saw her locked up in Arkham Asylum. During the Cataclysm, she tried to kill Greg Rorak, an Arkham security guard, as she believed him to be one of the men responsible for her death. Toyman. Winslow Schott had a talent for toy making from an early age and soon became well renowned for his toys. However, when the owner of an arms manufacturer proposed purchasing his technology for usage in weapons development, Winslow was horrified by the suggestion. After rejecting the offer, Winslow's wife was killed in a car accident, causing him to sell his business. In actuality, Winslow was never legally married and created his wife Mary, an android programmed to act as his spouse. Winslow took his revenge by killing the unscrupulous businessman before embarking on a criminal career as Toyman. After hearing his deceased mother's voice in his head, he would listen to her commands and escape prison before changing his image. Toyman abducted several children in Metropolis before killing them, but was brought to justice by Superman before being incarcerated in Arkham Asylum. Our final inmate of Arkham is another special case and may come as a shock to you, because it is Batman himself.
Special case.
Batman has had numerous stays in the asylum, perhaps most notably during the last Arkham storyline, where he was planted there to decipher how Victor Zsasz was escaping to commit his murders. However, a more interesting visit was during the events of A Serious House on Serious Earth. When the Joker blackmailed Batman into entering Arkham, the Dark Knight's greatest fear was not the inmates or the asylum, but that the Joker could be right about him, that Batman belonged in there with the rest of them. Batman would question the rationality of his own actions and worry that going to the asylum would be just like coming home. The Cape Crusader's state of mind was eventually tested by Dr. Ruth Adams, who upon the Joker's request delved into his psyche, which seemed to break him. Perhaps our final entry belongs in the asylum just as much as the villains he incarcerates. This depiction of Batman brings into question his role as a hero, or rather controversially, an anti-hero. Are Batman's actions for the greater good of Gotham, and therefore heroic? Or are his actions solely for the benefit of himself? By donning the Batsuit and battling criminals, is he merely trying to combat his own pain? As a result, is Batman actually creating more nefarious villains through his actions and exacerbating criminality within Gotham? With this in mind, is Batman actually an anti-hero who belongs in Arkham Asylum? Whether you agree with Batman belonging inside Arkham Asylum or not, I hope that you enjoyed this video and the presentation of the inmates. Apologies if I excluded any of your favourites, but I tried to fit in as many as I could. Please let me know what future uploads you would like to see, and remember to like and subscribe if you'd like to subscribe. Until next time, make sure that you all take care of yourselves out there in the asylum.